Now, over here on this show, House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan is issuing a subpoena to a former top prosecutor for Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Jordan is demanding testimony from Mark Pomerantz over his role investigating Donald Trump and the Trump Organization. Pomerantz resigned from the DA's office in 2022, one day after Bragg told him that he wasn't prepared to move forward with criminal charges at that point. Pomerantz said at the time that Trump was, quote, guilty of numerous felony violations. Now, Pomerantz declined to comment, but Bragg responded. The House GOP continues to attempt to undermine an active investigation and ongoing New York criminal case with an unprecedented campaign of harassment and intimidation. So joining me now is Bob Bianchi, former head prosecutor in Morris County, New Jersey, and a host on the Law and Crime Network. Bob, good to see you. So how is a congressional subpoena justified in this case?
I don't think it is justified. As a former prosecutor that ran a prosecutorial agency, we have sovereign immunity here. We have a state of New Jersey where I practiced, where I'm allowed to be able to proceed in my duties as to whether or not to charge or not charge cases, prosecute them or not prosecute. I prosecuted many political cases, and I can't even imagine the idea that the federal government decides to come in. We always talk about states' rights, but all of a sudden state rights are obliterated here and drag me in to try to explain what I'm doing on a local level with regard to political corruption cases. So from a legal standpoint, it's not that it's never been done. There have been federal subpoenas and congressional subpoenas with regard to civil rights cases when there were sham prosecutions and things of that nature, but that's not what we're dealing with here. So Alvin Bragg and his team are basically saying you have no right as the federal government. This has nothing to do with Congress. This is a local matter. Hands off with respect to our investigation. I'll just add one other note. When I'm reading this, and again, it's not whether it's a right issue, a left issue, a Democrat, Republican issue, but this is coming dangerously close to obstructing and interfering with an investigation and a prosecution. Omar, the thing that you do here is that if you think that there's been something that's been done that's inappropriate, politically motivated, the process is you go to a trial court. The trial motions are made before the trial court. If the trial court denies them, there's a jury, there's a verdict, and if there's a conviction, the process is that you appeal it and you make those arguments. Congress, as the legislative branch, and the federal government, in my estimation, in this particular situation, has no right to be bringing in a local prosecutor in the middle of an investigation and in the middle of a criminal prosecution because it's hampering their ability to continue to investigate and prosecute the case. So this is really a very dangerous precedent. And even if the political parties switch, this is not the kind of thing that local prosecutors should be dragged in. They don't have the constitutional authority to bring this state sovereign in to demand answers, in my opinion.
Yeah, and clearly, you disagree with this move, but at this point, I guess I think what choice does Pomerantz have, especially when the House Judiciary Committee is arguing that he's been outspoken about the investigation, which they say suggests that Bragg's prosecution of President Trump is politically motivated. I mean, does he have options here?
He can move to quash the subpoena, or he can go and honor the subpoena and say that I am not going to be giving any information with regard to an investigation. But the problem is, as you note, that he goes and he writes a book, which was really, in my opinion, not the thing to do, to talk about internal deliberations that were going on amongst the prosecutors. So that does muck up, if you will, this particular situation. But nevertheless, Alvin Bragg is the person who was his boss. It was an investigation that was occurring in Bragg's office, and I believe Bragg has the ability to be able to say, even though he wrote that book, you don't have a right to bring him in. The issue is, he did the book, fine, and that's not a good thing in my mind. But nevertheless, you don't have a right to be able to subpoena him, bring him in, and talk about the internal deliberations that were going on with respect to the case. The bottom line is it's just affecting the ability to have a fair and impartial jury decide the case.
Yeah. Well, Bob Bianchi, thank you so much. The insight is appreciated. We'll see what happens.
Thank you.